Hello everyone, here's Adriano, and we are about to study a lesson of Grade Time 5, Unit 1, okay, which is called Survival. Well, it's a very interesting topic, isn't it? Well, so how many stories do you know about people that have gone through survival moments? Okay, some difficult situations where they have to struggle not to die and to survive. Well, do you have any movies or any things that you remember that deals with the topic of survival? I can remember one called Alive. I think it was a movie from 1993 that it's about a Uruguayan rugby team that on the way to a competition that they have a terrible accident and their plane crash and falls into the Andes mountains, okay? And that happened in October 1972, and they get stranded in the middle of nowhere fighting for survival.
After 20 years, you analyze a lot. You remember people, heroism, the miracle of the Andes, that's what they called it. To be affronted by solitude without decadence or a single material thing to prostitute it elevates you to a spiritual plane where I felt the presence of God. Now there's the God they taught me about at school. And there is the God that's hidden by what surrounds us in this civilization.
Are we supposed to fly that close to the mountains?
That's the God I met on the mountain. We were brought together by a grand experience.
I think you know lots of stories about it, okay? And we're going to see one in this unit about survival, about two climbers, okay, that tried to climb a mountain and something terrible happened to one of them, all right? So let's get started. We have here some pictures, okay? You can see 4 pictures on this page, and we here have some words. We have the word number 1. If you look at number 1 here, you have the word summit, a rope, a glacier, and a crevasse. And I want you to try to identify in the picture which one is a summit, which one is rope, which one is a glacier, and which one is a crevasse. Okay? Well, I have some images to help you here. Okay, so you have here summit. What is the summit? Summit is the highest point of a mountain. Okay, so this is the summit. And we usually say, for example, in this example, Dr. Michael or Michel Packard and Jacques Baumat reached the summit of Mont Blanc. So usually the climbers, they reach the summit of a mountain, for example, the top of the mountain, the highest point, okay? The other one is rope. So rope is this object that you use. It's a strong, thick string made of long, twisted threads. This is a rope. And this is the object that the climbers use to climb mountains, okay? The other one is a glacier, which is a large mass of ice that moves slowly, okay? So this is a glacier. And the other one is a crevasse. So it's a very deep crack in the thick ice of a glacier. So we have like this glacier, and there is like a crack and very deep. If a person falls into a crevasse, this person might get injured. Okay, so these are the vocabulary that I want you to know. All right, let's see here. Okay, so if you look at those pictures here, you can see that here is the summit, here is the rope that the climbers is using, here is the crevasse, and here is the glacier. All right. Well, let's take a look at this question here, number 2. Imagine that you're spending time in an environment like this. What kinds of things could go wrong? Okay, what are the dangers? Let's make a list. Of course, if you are spending time in a situation like this, many things could go wrong, right? So what could go wrong? So this is the idea here. So what are dangers of these kind of things? Okay, so I would like you to take some moment for you to make a list. Pause the video right now, and then we continue in 2 minutes. Okay, have you made your list? So imagine that you are in such a situation, okay, at the top of a mountain, okay, and you are in the middle of nowhere. You know, such people like those people in those pictures, okay? So I haven't made a list myself. For example, you could get lost. Let me see if it's going to work here. You could get lost. So this is one possibility. So you don't find your way back to where you were, okay? Another possibility is to fall into a crevasse. So it's an accident, and then you might get injured. Another one is run out of water or food. Imagine that you don't have any water anymore, no food. So it's a terrible situation. Another one, it can get dark and you don't have a tent to sleep in. Imagine. So it's in the middle of nowhere, it's getting dark, you don't have time to go all the way down the mountain, and you have to spend the night in this mountain, but you don't have a tent. Okay? Any other that you put? Maybe you have come up with other possibilities. Okay? Now let's go back to the text. Okay? To the unit. So here is the unit. Okay? And on page 13 we have this text: Sacrifice for Survival. So this is a story about 2 mountain climbers, Joe Simpson and Simon Yates. Okay, and this story was later made into a movie, Touching the Void. The name of the movie is Touching the Void. Okay.
We knew a number of expeditions had failed on it, so we knew it was hard.
At some point, you're going to have to rely wholly on your partner.
I didn't really know what I was letting myself in for.
We just lost control.
I just felt it was best to get as far away as possible.
I was just convinced he was dead.
As soon as I saw it, I knew it had been cut. I thought, this is it. This is as far as this game goes.
And what happened? What happened to both of them? And that involved a matter of life or death. Okay? So now I want you to pause this video, okay, and go to the text. I would like you to read the text, okay, so we have a text here for you to read, and then I want you to complete this text, okay, this with this sentences here, okay, because here we have some gaps. Gap number 1, gap number 2, 3, 4, and here you have some, let's see here, you have some sentences to be completed there, okay? Look, then something dramatic happened. Letter B, Simon couldn't talk to him or see him. Several teams had tried before, but they had all failed. Both men knew that it would be impossible to survive. Despite his extreme injuries, he had managed to crawl out of the crevasse, letter F, and they had run out of fuel for their stove, letter G. When he finally arrived at the base camp, he was absolutely exhausted, and letter H, the weather conditions were awful. Okay, so take a moment now, pause this video, and try to complete these gaps here with these sentences here, okay? I'll be waiting for you. Okay, are you ready? Did you have time to do it? Was it difficult? Well, now what you're going to do to correct what you have done, okay? We're going to listen to this part, and I want you to follow the story, okay? And if you have your book with you, take your book, get your book right now, okay? Then you're going to listen to that story. So the story is here. Let's see here. Let's do it.
Sacrifice for survival. This is the story of two ambitious mountain climbers, Joe Simpson and Simon Yates, whose story was later made into a movie, Touching the Void. It started with an outstanding success. Joe and Simon managed to climb the west face of Ciula Grande in the Peruvian Andes. Several teams had tried before, but they had all failed. After reaching the summit, Joe and Simon decided to go back down via the North Ridge, an extremely risky but faster route. Their ascent had already taken much longer than they had intended because of bad weather, and they had run out of fuel for their stove, so it wasn't possible for them to melt ice and snow for drinking water anymore. It was getting dark, too, and they knew they needed to descend quickly to the glacier, about 1,000 meters below. Then, something dramatic happened. Joe slipped and landed awkwardly, breaking his leg. Both Simon and Joe were terrified. They were at a height of 6,000 meters. The weather conditions were awful. They were freezing. They had no communication with the base camp, and there was no chance of a rescue helicopter or any other form of outside help. The situation was dire, not just for Joe, but for both of them. As an enormous snowstorm was building up around them, Simon tied two ropes together, tied them around Joe, and started lowering his injured friend. Suddenly, the knot got stuck between two rocks, and Joe was left hanging from a cliff, in mid-air, over a huge crevasse. Simon couldn't talk to him or see him. He tried desperately for more than an hour to pull his friend up, but without success. The situation was absolutely hopeless. Simon imagined both himself and his friend dying in the snow and ice. He didn't want to leave his friend alone, but the more he thought about it, the more he began to understand that there was no way he could save both his own life and that of his friend. For a moment, Simon felt like giving up, but he decided to cut the rope and save his own life. Joe fell away, right down to the bottom of the crevasse. The next day, when Simon continued down the mountain and passed the area where Joe had landed, he saw no signs of life. He assumed Joe was dead. But he wasn't. Joe had survived the fall. Despite his extreme injuries, he had managed to crawl out of the crevasse. For the next 3.5 days, he continued to descend the mountain, crawling and hopping on one leg under extremely difficult conditions. He even managed to cross a glacier with no safety equipment or rope assistance whatsoever. When he finally arrived at base camp, he was absolutely exhausted. The others were thrilled and amazed to see him, especially because they had been preparing to leave. Joe's incredible determination and the fact that he hadn't given up under the most desperate conditions had helped him to save his own life.
Okay, now that you have read the text, let's correct. So these sentences are on page 12, exercise number 4, okay? So then something dramatic happened. Then we have B. Simon couldn't talk to him or see him. Letter C. Several teams had tried before, but they had all failed. Letter D. Both men knew that it would be impossible to survive. Despite his extreme injuries, he had managed to crawl out of the crevasse. Letter F. And they had run out of fuel for their stove. Letter G. When he finally arrived at the base camp, he was absolutely exhausted, and the weather conditions were awful. So let's see the first sentence here. We have this. After reaching the summit, Joe and Simon decided to go back down. So here is letter C. So letter C is in number 1. So several teams had tried before, but they had all failed. What these teams had tried? They had tried to climb and to reach the summit of the mountain, but they had all failed, okay? So after reaching the summit, Joe and Simon decided to go back. Well, what about the other one? It's letter F, okay? So letter F. And they had run out of fuel for their stove. So this is number 2. Let's see if it makes sense, okay? The ascent had already taken much longer than they had intended because of bad weather. Then we have this, and they had run out of fuel for their stove. Okay, so even a more difficult condition for them. So it wasn't possible for them to melt ice and snow for drinking water anymore. Okay, so this is letter F in space number 2, in gap number 2. Let's see the next gap. The next gap starts with like, both Simon and Joe were terrified. They were at a height of 6,000 meters. And then we can go to letter H. The weather conditions were awful. They were freezing. So here is number 4. So because the weather conditions were awful, and then it continues. They were freezing. So this is where we complete letter H in gap number 4. Let's see the next gap. Yes. There is a gap, number 5, and then it continues. He tried desperately for more than an hour to pull his friend up, but without success. So this is letter B. So letter B is number 5, because let's see if it makes sense. Simon couldn't talk to him or see him. He tried desperately for more than an hour to pull his friends up. So because what happened to his friend Joe? He fell into the crevasse, okay? And he couldn't pull him up. And he tried really hard to talk to him, and he had no answer, okay? So that's the situation here. Well, what about the next one, number 6? Number 6 we have like this. But he wasn't. Joe had survived the fall. There is the gap, and then for the next 3 days and a half day, For the next 3.5 days, he continued to descend the mountain. So what's here? Here is letter E. Despite his extreme injuries, he had managed to crawl out of the crevasse. So that's what happened to Joey. This is number 6. So despite his extreme injury, so he was very, very much hurt. He was injured. But even though he managed to crawl out all of the crevasse, and then it continues like this. And for the next 3.5 days, he continued to descend the mountain. Okay? Letter G. When he finally arrived at the base camp, he was absolutely exhausted. So this is, okay, number 7. Okay? Number 7. So, because number 7 is something like this. We have the last paragraph. When he finally arrived at the base camp, he was absolutely exhausted. The others were thrilled and amazed to see him. Okay? And we just forget in letter A. Then something dramatic happened. So it leaves gap number 3, which is missing. Okay, gap number 3. So it goes like this. Then something dramatic happened. In the first paragraph, Joe slipped and landed awkwardly, breaking his leg. So this is number 3. And what it's missing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the last one is, okay, no use. So both men knew that it would be impossible to survive. Okay, so all of the numbers. So we have 7 numbers, right? So far so good? Okay, guys. So now we are going to pause the video. I want you to pause the video. Okay, and you're going to go to the next part, which is Train to Think, page 13. So guys, as we saw in the story, there was a very difficult situation for Simon. Okay, so why was the situation difficult for Simon? Because look here, they were preparing to to go down. Yeah, so they decided to get the faster route, but in the middle of this process, Joey slipped and landed awkwardly, breaking his leg. So there was a very, very difficult situation here. And then even worse, what happened? So the situation was terrible. So Simon, look here. Simon tied 2 ropes together, tied them around Joe, and started lowering his injured friend. Okay? Suddenly, the knot got stuck between 2 rocks, and Joey was left hanging from a cliff. Okay, so this was terrible because he wanted to help his friend, but then Joe got stuck between 2 rocks, and then he couldn't pull his up, he couldn't talk to him anymore, and Simon had to make a decision here. Okay, so he didn't know what to do. He didn't want to leave his friend alone, but the more he thought about it, the more he began to understand there was no way he could save both his own life and that of his friend. So what did he decide to do? He decided to cut the rope and save his own life. Okay, and just had to leave Joe away. Okay, that was a very terrible decision. But fortunately, as you see by the end of the story, at the end of the story, Joey didn't die. He managed to survive. Okay, so that leads us to the Train to Think situation here. Okay, let's take a look at this situation. Solving a problem requires decision making. In a difficult situation, it's important not to get distracted by irrelevant ideas, so we can concentrate on what is relevant and make the right decision. Okay, so do you think that what Simon did was the right decision? So he had to cut the rope and let Joe alone. and die. In his mind, Joe had died, okay, but fortunately he hadn't. So let's take a look here, just to make you more, to give you a better idea of this. Imagine this situation here, okay? Which are relevant or irrelevant? Take a look. I'm looking for a present, it's a present for my sister, and I need to decide what to buy. Which of the following is relevant to my decision? So for example, I have a dog. I have $20. My sister's name is Sally. Sally loves chocolate. If I'm looking for a present for my sister and I need to decide to buy, if I have a dog, is it relevant for this situation, to my decision here? I have $20. Is it relevant if I want to buy a present for my sister? My sister's name is Sally. Is it relevant for my decision? Sally loves chocolate. Is it relevant? So let's take a look here. Yeah, so I have a dog. It's irrelevant, sorry. I have $20. It's very relevant because if I want to buy a present for my sister, it matters how much money I have, right? My sister's name is Sally, so for this situation it's relevant. And she loves chocolate. It's very relevant because if I know what she likes, I can buy her a better present, okay? I can really give her something that she likes. All right? So let's go back to the presentation here. So in a decision making, in a very difficult situation, okay, which of these facts were relevant for Simon in making his decision to cut the rope? Okay, so let's take a look at number 1. Ciudad Grande is part of the Andes region of Peru. So is this information, is this fact relevant for making him cut the rope? Okay, the 2 climbers had already reached the summit. So is it relevant? Number 3, Joe had a broken leg. Is it relevant? Okay, for his decision of cutting the rope. There was no way they could get help from anywhere. Is it relevant? Their way back down was via the North Ridge. Is it relevant or irrelevant? And number 6, the rope got stuck and it was impossible to pull Joe out of the crevasse. So what do you think? Was this important as well? So pause the video now and decide which ones are relevant facts that made Simon cut that rope, okay? Okay, after your pause, we're back. So what do you think? Which of these facts were relevant for Simon in making his decision to cut the rope? Number 1, is it relevant? Let's see, no, I don't think so, right? So the fact of, let me just find here, okay, here, just wait a minute, yeah, better. So the first one, which facts are relevant? The first one, was it relevant? Ciudad Grande is part of the Andes region in Peru. No, it doesn't make any, it's not relevant at all for his decision here, okay? 2 climbers had already reached the summit. So it's another extra information, extra fact, but it's not relevant. Joey had a broken leg. Yeah, definitely. This was really relevant, okay? So he was there, his friend had a broken leg. He couldn't carry his friend all the way down the mountain. So that was a very difficult situation, but he had to do it. He had to cut because one of the facts is Joe had a broken leg, okay? Number 4, there was no way they could get help from anywhere. Is this relevant? very relevant, okay? Because he himself couldn't carry Joey in his arms all the way down. So this is one of the facts that made him cut the rope. Their way back down was via the North Ridge. Is this relevant? No, not relevant. And number 6, the rope got stuck. Oh, so he couldn't move the rope, so it was stuck, you know? And it was impossible to pull Joe out of the crevasse. Is this relevant? Definitely relevant, okay? So because of these 3 facts, Joe had a broken leg. There was no way they could get help. And the rope got stuck, and it was impossible to pull Joe out of the crevasse. He had that important decision of cutting the rope and letting Joe fall down. And in his mind, in Simon's mind, let Joe die. But fortunately, as we know at the end of the story, he didn't die. Okay, let's check. Okay, well done. All right, and just for us to wrap up this unit, okay, I would like you to take a look at this last part. Read the situations. Let me just zoom in here. Read the situations. For each one, think about what you might want to do and what you should do. So here there's a difference, okay? So what you might want to do is something that at the bottom of your heart is what you want to do, okay? So in that case of Joe, Simon might not cut the rope. He doesn't want to cut the rope because he doesn't want his friend to die. But he didn't do it because he did what he should have done. Okay? So what he should do, he should cut the rope. Okay? So here, just an example. You have an important test tomorrow, and your friend wants you to go to a party. Well, what you might want to do, I think, in your thought, I want to go to that party. So yeah, I might want to go to that party. But what you should really do, I think you should stay home and study, because tomorrow you have a test. So can you see the difference? Yeah. So what you might want to do, I might want to go to the party. But what I really should do is to stay home and study for the test tomorrow. Okay? Let's take a look at the number 2. You haven't been feeling well for several days. A tells you to go to the doctor. Someone tells you to go to the doctor. Another person tells you to take some medicine. You like B more than A. Okay, so what do you prefer? To go to the doctor or to take some medicine? Okay, so what you might want to do and what you should do. And finally, you borrowed a friend's bike and had a small accident. There's a scratch on the bike that isn't easy to see. Wow. So what you might want to do, to hide from your friend that you fell off the bike and that there was an accident with the bike, or you're going to tell your friend that there was a scratch on your friend's bike, okay? So what you might want to do and what you should do. So I want you to pause this video and do this activity, okay? Alright, so these are personal answers, and I don't know what you did. Okay, so in my opinion, in number 1, I would study for the test. So what I should do, I should stay home and study for the test, which is tomorrow. Okay, in number 2, I haven't been feeling well for days. I think I should go to the doctor. That's what I should definitely do. Okay, I might want to just take a medicine, but I think I should go to the doctor. And number 3, I definitely should tell my friend that there is a scratch on his bike. Even though he can't see it, I think I should be honest with him. Okay? Well, so it's time to say goodbye. I hope you had a very productive and interesting lesson. And I want to see you next time. Okay, we're going to continue with that unit. Have a nice day, night, morning, and stay home, okay? Stay safe, and see you next class. Bye-bye.